Welcome to the Almost Daily ZenCast. With your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zappo. Theme music by Gazuta. On today's episode, in the present moment. In this present moment, right now, in this nowness, this current moment that by curiosity we are sharing, by circumstance we are engaged in living through this moment now together. Now, what a strange idea. Now. What time is it? Now. Ask me again in the future, what time is it? My answer will be now. Because it is always now, this present moment. And in this present moment, which we are currently sharing, we are cohabitating, co-creating, co-manifesting. In this moment, and I don't just mean you and I, as we share this experience that I call the Almost Daily ZenCast, I mean you, me, them, the politicians, the political base, the religious people, the atheists. I mean the species. In this moment now that we are all sharing, what is it that keeps us apart? What is it that keeps us in this present moment so eager to feel alone, separate, other than? It's a question for the ages, right? You might as well be asking, what is the meaning of being alive? There's many, many ways to attempt to answer questions like this. Questions that seem almost unfathomable. And while I mean not to pass judgment on the various alternatives, I think that if we use our skills of discernment together as a species, we might be able to sort out the options that present themselves, the options that we come up with, the options that others suggest, the options that seem obvious, and the options that don't seem so obvious. And we can sort them out into a different arrangement, a different sorting pile, a different way of filtering is what I'm talking about. We can sort them out in such a way that we understand which one of these many issues and opportunities and possibilities is the most appropriate for the present moment now, which we are all sharing. The trick is, the catch 22, is that our individual minds will want to judge things according to our individual interests, preferences, priorities. I'm not saying those aren't important. Duality and non-duality coexist at all times, so our individual experience is valid. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's individual experience. What I am suggesting is that there is out there and within us more to this thing we call life, more to this phenomena we call reality than our individual interests, preferences, and priorities. There's more to what's going on than that which we desire. There's more to what is going on in reality than we usually care to focus on. We can get into a debate about why we do this, but I'm not here to argue with people. I'm just here to express my opinion, ask questions, and invite you to retort, and I'll address, those questions as they come. Pause. If you're a new listener, please, by all means, come join me on Facebook and join the discussion there. I often turn to Facebook for content to discuss here on the show. As a matter of fact, I want to segregate it out a bit and focus it into its own segment. It's actually an old idea, not a new idea. I had this idea from the beginning of the project. But stay tuned for, the long-awaited, long-promised rolling out of some of these things I've been tinkering with and talking about for over a year and a half now. All right. Returning to the topic at hand. We strive to balance our personal needs and the needs of others, but we usually limit that action, that perspective, the scope of our activities just described to ourselves and those that we choose to include in our circle of concern. This seems reasonable on the face of it. Over 700 billion people on the planet, I think, right? Or 7 billion? I don't know. 700 billion or 7 billion? I think it's 700 billion, right? Don't have the number right in front of me, and I'm not the kind of person that has little details completely memorized. Forgive me, it's a flaw. I need to look things up to make sure I reference them correctly. I'm not going to do that now. There's a lot of people on the planet, and to try to include them all in our metaphorical circle of concern, the way we are accustomed to managing that in our thoughts, it seems daunting. It seems nearly impossible. And I'll say this about that. It's not impossible because there's too many people. It's not impossible to care about everyone. What feels daunting and impossible is to think about it in sentences. and to explain it to ourselves through our ego mind using those sentences. That's what makes it feel impossible. There's a lot of things that words can make appear to be true, right? Words can convince you of things that are actually, in fact, not really happening. That's the power of words. They carry and convey their own weight beyond that which they represent. And thus we must use our words wisely. But let's digress here. Let's return to this question that I just labeled as unapproachable or even unanswerable. What can we do in this present moment, any given day or week or hour? Because those things are constructs, right? Days, weeks, hours, minutes, time, the way we use it is actually a tool. It's a measuring stick. It is not a thing in unto itself. And that's one of our classic problems as human species. We've attributed so much power to words and what they represent conceptually that we now attach ourselves to those powerful words more than we try to experience the reality they represent. I would humbly propose that this might be backwards. In this present moment now, the single most urgent calling that I have had the personal experience of encountering, the single most powerful statement about the present moment now, the single word that seems to be the best answer, in my humble opinion, would be healing. If we wanted to create a word label with multiple words, you might label this answer transformative healing through forgiveness or something along those lines. In this present moment now, more urgently than politics, more importantly than economy, although I'm not totally blowing these things off, right? Like politics, economy, societal norms, all the things we get caught up in. The comings and goings of ideas. These things have their value, and they need to be sorted out. But if we were to pause for a moment and ask ourselves, what might be the most important thing to address first, to deal with first, to engage in first? And by first, I simply mean before all the rest of the stuff, before all the other words, before we give ourselves over and engage in believing in, subscribing to, adhering to, defending and fighting over ideological constructs. Before any of that, I humbly propose that the most urgent, important, powerful thing that any single one of us, and therefore arguably that every single one of us in totality, could be focusing on is healing. Am I being a broken record? Perhaps. But I genuinely share with you my thoughts that seem to spiral back to this center because I believe it is at the center of what could be a complex, sophisticated, and nuanced solution to the raging madness we call everyday life. I could be wrong. Maybe if we all loved each other and forgave each other and loved ourselves and forgave ourselves, maybe politics wouldn't suddenly be fixed. Maybe war wouldn't suddenly end. Maybe peace wouldn't suddenly break out. Maybe. But if we did do that, if you made the effort and you helped others around you turn their attention towards making that effort, maybe, just maybe, those things could happen. It's just as likely, right? Because any argument that says that cannot be so had better have some really solid, concrete reasons, explaining what prevents the objective from being made manifest. When someone says love cannot fix the world, they better have some really clear and believable reasons as to why, in my opinion. Otherwise, I'll keep putting my faith in love and healing and transformation and forgiveness. So far, people have attempted, and I do not mean to portray any of these individuals in a bad light. I'm sort of just painting in broad strokes here about conversations I've had over the last 30 years. But people, many people, dozens upon dozens upon dozens, hundreds perhaps, I don't know, maybe even thousands, to me, directly, to my face, in a text message, through an email, on social media, have tried to tell me, either with anger or with patience or with pity or with frustration and spite. They've tried to put me in my place and tell me I'm categorically wrong. Love is impotent. Love does nothing. Forgiveness achieves zero. And there's no such thing as healing. Now, they've tried. I say that to honor their efforts, but they have completely and utterly failed. Because their words were just words, and I have felt the power of transformative healing through forgiveness. I have witnessed the change happen in people, in myself and in others. And those people aren't perfect. I am not perfect. But you see my point. The rational argument against solving the world's problems through love, forgiveness, and healing, they might convince a person to avoid investing in love, forgiveness, and healing. But the words alone do not prove that love, forgiveness, and healing will fail. I have yet to see the convincing statement. I have yet to be shown actual proof. Now, the quickest and stupidest go-to that people say is when someone's trying to shoot you in the face, can you hug them into not shooting you? Yeah, probably not going to work that way. But I will counter with this. I've had guns pointed at me twice, and I was unarmed, and I chose nonviolent engagement. I didn't get shot. I didn't do anything special or magical, but treat that person like a person and invite them to treat me like a human being and ask them if they really wanted my blood on their hands. Now, some people wouldn't think twice and then just, put a cap in that person's ass for asking. But those people are still not incapable of being healed. They're not beyond healing. And now, this is a controversial statement to make, but there are those out there that believe that there's a solid line somewhere, and that once that line is crossed, anyone is hitherto and forevermore unworthy, unworthy is just the most direct. That they're just unforgivable. They are unsavable. They are unhealable. I am not sure that I can buy into that. Here's why. It suits the needs of the system of oppression too well. When you make that line, when you draw that line and impose that line on reality, let's assume that that line does not exist in nature, but we've created it. We've said, here's a line, and beyond that line, doesn't matter who you were before, once you cross that line, you're unforgivable, you are unlovable, you are unworthy of being saved, healed, transformed in any way, shape, or form. That, as an ideological construct, as a thing you believe in, as something to adhere to, a belief system to cling on to, serves the purposes of the system of oppression. How? It's simple. The system of oppression depends on, relies on, is in fact contingent on the species being so distracted, so divided, so willing to hate and argue and fight and shoot each other and kill each other instead of engaging in healing, forgiveness, transformation. That alone makes me think, whoa, we better start trying then to erase that line. We better start putting all of our effort into healing through forgiveness and transformative spiritual work, not just ourselves, but everyone, and especially, most specifically, most importantly, the broken ones, the dark ones, the evil ones, the bad guys. Because killing them doesn't do anything. Corporal punishment does not prevent crimes. It doesn't. The statistical facts are out there. If it did, we would be living in a crime-free society already because we've killed a shit ton of people for committing crimes. And we don't live in a crime-free society, do we? So killing people who kill people to tell other people that killing people is bad just turns us into murderers. No one likes hearing that. But if you think the solution to the world's problems is killing a bunch of rich people, you become a murderer. Who are you to judge who is worthy or unworthy? No matter what they've done, no matter how hideous the crime, I humbly submit to you that only God can choose who is unworthy of forgiveness. Now, this is a hard pill to swallow. Doesn't matter what background you come from. Whether you're atheist, spiritual, unsure, fundamentalists, this or that, Catholic, any of the variations. And I've yet to meet a person that is like, yeah, forgive the worst of the worst, and then we can really start talking. The last person I recall ever publicly saying that was a certain somebody named Yeshua Christos, and, by the way, much erased from history, his partner, Maria Magdalene. And they killed Christos and slut-shamed and erased Magdalene from history. And 3,000 years later, here we are, in a world motivated by greed, fueled by ego, primed by violence, and focused on conflict and hatred. With everyone going, not me though, it's not me, it's everybody else. We blame society, but we are society. You want to fix society? Focus on love, focus on forgiveness, focus on transformative healing. Start with yourself and work out in a spiral through everyone you know. Everything else seems like a waste of time. I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to judge everything else or anyone who believes or buys into everything else. I'm just stating that from my perspective, after years of contemplating, testing, questioning, searching, doubting, this is the conclusion I've come to. And I'm not living it out perfectly, but I'm doing more towards living that out now than I ever have in my past life. So, I humbly offer my thoughts and opinions and my availability to you, my friends, as audience. Please share with me your thoughts and opinions. This show is intended to be a conversation, an audience participation show. And so far, I don't have a large enough audience to really generate that kind of action, but it's getting there. And so to everyone listening along, thank you so much for your support and your patience. And if you've been sort of meaning to write in and drop a line and check in and ask questions, get on it. Because I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear about whether or not these things are making sense to you, whether or not you think I'm crazy, whether or not you've even tried some of my silly suggestions, and whether or not you personally have experienced what I'm talking about. Whether or not, I want to hear about your attempts to forgive yourself and everyone around you. I want to hear about your attempts to rediscover how to love yourself in order to be able to love others. Because the more we talk about and share our stories in this regard, the more others in the species, because we're all connected, right? They're going to be drawn towards this healthy thinking, towards this transformative thinking, towards this loving, healing, forgiving thinking. Because whether you realize it or not, deep down, that's how life works. More on that in past episodes and future episodes. Stay tuned. Things are gradually evolving with the Almost Daily ZenCast. And as always, I humbly thank you for tuning in. Until next time, may peace, love, and grooviness be with you. I've been your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. And here's some beautiful music by Gazuta. Stay tuned, friends. There's new episodes dropping of all the segments, including some lively conversations with the members of this band and art house collective, Gazuta, which is now providing our theme music and other music throughout the show. If you want to find me on social media, just search for Mr. Zeppo with no period. On Instagram, it's literally at Mr. Zeppo.